So, let's go. You've trained for every emergency, you've drilled every failure mode, you've spent years preparing for Mars, and none of it matters for what's about to happen to you. Here are 8 things the first Mars crew will face that no training can prepare them for. Number 1, the last call home. A few days after launch, something changes, not dramatically, no alarm goes off, no one makes an announcement. But at some point during the first week of your journey, the physics of where you are quietly rewrites the rules of what help means. Right now, if an astronaut on the International Space Station has a medical emergency, Mission Control can respond in under a second. 1 second. The kind of pause you take before answering a simple question. For you, on your way to Mars, that gap is already stretching into minutes, and it will keep stretching, all the way to 48 minutes for a round trip when the planets are at their farthest apart. Think about what 48 minutes actually means. You notice chest pain, you send a message, you wait nearly an hour for a response, and during that hour, whatever is happening inside your body is still happening. The response finally arrives, and it says something like, "Describe the pain more precisely." So you do. You wait another 48 minutes, you get the idea, but the communication delay isn't even the most disorienting part. The most disorienting part is what it means for who's in charge. Every crewed mission before yours had an escape hatch, a moment where someone on Earth could say abort, and the crew could abort. Apollo astronauts could punch out and come home at almost any point in the mission. Even the most dangerous phases of a moon landing were designed around the possibility of turning back. Your mission isn't designed that way. NASA's own internal documents say it plainly. Abort will not be useful for crew risk mitigation. A few days after launch, your only option for coming home early is a long, looping trajectory that would take about 2 years to complete. 2 years. That's not an abort. That's just a different kind of mission. So you are, in every practical sense, on your own. Earth is still there. You can still talk to them. But they cannot help you in real time, they cannot override your decisions, and they cannot come get you. You are the highest authority that exists in your corner of the solar system. Here's the thing. Nobody tells you about that. It doesn't feel empowering. Studies of long-duration crews found that conflicts with mission control happen 5 times more often than conflicts between crewmates. 5 times. The people you're trapped with are fine. It's the people you can't reach who drive you insane. The ones who send instructions 16 minutes after the problem already resolved itself, who schedule your days from a planet they cannot see out their window. At some point, a psychological phenomenon researchers call closing sets in. The crew stops being fully honest with the ground. They share less. They filter more. They start making decisions without asking, not because they're rebellious, because they've learned through experience that asking doesn't really help. This is your first week. Number 2. The light show. Inside your skull, you can't feel it. That's the first thing to understand. There's no tingling, no warmth, no warning. The thing moving through you right now, through the walls of your spacecraft, through your suit, through your body, is galactic cosmic radiation. And it has been traveling across the universe for millions of years just to pass through you like you're not even there. Galactic cosmic rays are not like the radiation you've heard about on Earth. They're not gamma rays from a nuclear plant, not UV from the sun. They're protons and atomic nuclei accelerated to nearly the speed of light by ancient stellar explosions, and they carry so much energy that your spacecraft's metal walls are basically decorative. Worse than decorative, actually. When these particles slam into dense aluminum, they can fragment into a spray of secondary particles, like a bullet hitting a wall and turning into shrapnel. Adding more shielding can make it worse. Over the course of your mission, 6 months out, 18 months on the surface, 6 months back, you will absorb roughly 1 full sievert of radiation. That's the equivalent of about 10,000 chest x-rays, delivered continuously over 3 years. It's enough that NASA's own safety standards, which cap astronauts at a 3% excess cancer mortality risk, are technically violated by the mission you're on. The limits were written for low Earth orbit. Nobody's updated them for a trip like this yet. But none of that is what's strangest. The strangest part happens in the dark when you close your eyes to sleep. You see flashes, little sparks of blue-white light blooming and vanishing in your visual field, even though your eyes are shut and the lights are off. This isn't a hallucination, it's physics. When a high-energy particle passes through your eye or directly through your visual cortex, it triggers a flash of light that your brain registers as real. Astronauts have been reporting this since the Apollo missions. It happens constantly in deep space. You will fall asleep watching a private light show made of ancient cosmic debris moving through your brain at nearly the speed of light. Every astronaut who has gone beyond low Earth orbit has experienced this. You're no different. And the particles aren't just passing through your eyes, they're passing through everything: your skin, your lungs, your gut lining, and your DNA. High-energy heavy nuclei cause a specific kind of damage that your body's repair systems weren't built for. On Earth, radiation tends to snap one strand of your DNA at a time, and your cells know how to fix that. These particles snap both strands simultaneously, in clusters, and the repair machinery gets confused. It makes mistakes. Some of those mistakes, over years, become something else. Here's the number the headlines usually skip. The upper bound estimates for radiation-related mortality on a Mars mission sit around 10%. Morbidity, meaning serious health consequences, you survive, around 20%. Those are 95th percentile projections, not guaranteed outcomes. But they exist, they're in the literature, someone did the math and wrote it down, and you still can't feel any of it. Number 3, you land wrong. When the hatch opens, and Mars is right there, the orange dust, the low horizon, the butterscotch sky, your first instinct is going to be to walk out and stand on another planet. You are going to want to do that. Every human instinct you have is pointing in that direction. Don't go too fast. And you have just spent 6 months in microgravity. 6 months of your skeleton quietly losing calcium at about 1.5% per month, month after month, because your bones only maintain their density when they have something to push against, and in zero gravity, they have nothing. 6 months of your muscles shrinking because the only movement required to get around a spacecraft is fingertips on surfaces. 6 months of your cardiovascular system downsizing, your heart gradually reshaping because it no longer needs to pump blood upward against the pull of gravity. You arrive at Mars having aged, in bone terms, by something like several decades. And here's what makes it weirder. Mars. Gravity is not going to fix you. At 38% of Earth's gravity, you're well below the threshold that research suggests is needed to prevent muscle atrophy. Scientists identified that number recently. 0.67 G. Mars gives you 0.38. You're not back in gravity. You're in a different kind of insufficient gravity. Your body is going to feel unfamiliar to you. Heavier than the transit, but not right. Like wearing a suit of yourself that doesn't quite fit anymore. When you stand up too fast, your blood pressure drops. Your vision grays at the edges. This is called orthostatic hypotension, and on Earth it's a minor inconvenience. You grab the nearest surface and wait for it to pass. Inside a pressurized spacesuit on the surface of Mars, if you lose consciousness, you are not grabbing the nearest surface. You are falling. There's also the vision problem. About 40% of astronauts on long missions develop measurable visual impairment, not from the radiation, from the fluid shift. In microgravity, fluid pools in your upper body and stays there, raising the pressure inside your skull, which flattens the back of your eyeballs. Whether Mars gravity is enough to reverse this is genuinely unknown. You might step onto Mars and discover that your prescription has changed permanently somewhere over the asteroid belt. The planet you've traveled for 6 months to explore is right outside. You can see it through the visor. And the thing standing between you and it is the body you arrived in. Number 4. The dust gets in. Everything on Mars is covered in a fine, rust-colored powder, and it wants to be inside your lungs. Not metaphorically. The particle size is about 3 micrometers, 25 times thinner than a human hair, which is exactly small enough to bypass your nose and throat entirely and travel straight to the deepest part of your lungs, the alveoli, where gas exchange happens, where the lung tissue is most delicate, where particles that reach it tend to stay. The dust is not just mechanically abrasive, it's chemically hostile. Martian soil contains perchlorates, chlorine-based compounds that damage your thyroid gland, and at higher exposures, cause your bone marrow to stop producing blood cells. The safe exposure threshold for perchlorates by Earth standards is exceeded by just a few milligrams of Martian dust. A few milligrams is basically invisible. It's the amount that gets tracked in on a boot without anyone noticing. It also contains silica, the same material that gave coal miners silicosis, an incurable progressive disease where the lungs gradually fill with scar tissue until breathing becomes impossible. Coal miners developed silicosis from years of heavy occupational exposure. On Mars, the concentrations and the particle behavior are different enough that the comparison isn't perfect, but it's not perfect in a direction that makes you feel better. And here's the part that makes all of this worse. The dust is magnetic. Nanophase iron oxides give Mars its red color and give the dust electrostatic properties that make it actively cling to surfaces, visors, suits, equipment, airlocks. Apollo astronauts brought lunar dust back into the lander after every moonwalk, no matter how carefully they tried to clean off. On the return flight, it floated around the cabin. Astronaut Harrison Schmitt described the worst hay fever of his life inside a sealed capsule. Lunar dust is less toxic than Martian dust. You'll be on Mars for 18 months. The radiation compounds everything. Cosmic radiation has already made your lungs more vulnerable to pulmonary fibrosis, and then you breathe in a substance that causes pulmonary fibrosis. Your body's being worked on from two directions simultaneously. Every time you go outside and come back in, you bring a little bit of Mars with you. The habitat is not a sanctuary. It's just a place where the dust accumulates more slowly. Number 5. The clock is wrong. A day on Mars is 24 hours, 39 minutes, and 35 seconds. That extra 39 minutes sounds like nothing. It is not nothing. Your body runs on an internal clock, a biological oscillator in your brain that controls when you feel awake, when hormones release, when your body temperature rises and falls. This clock was calibrated by millions of years of evolution on a planet with a 24-hour day. On Earth, it's already slightly off. Most humans have a natural internal rhythm closer to 24 hours and 11 minutes, and the daily cycle of light and dark nudges it back into sync every morning. On Mars, the day is 39 minutes longer, and your clock, already imperfect, drifts further and further from the light cycle you're living in. 39 minutes per day adds up to 237 hours per year, nearly 10 full days of accumulated drift. You don't notice it on day 1. On day 10, you're going to bed 6 minutes later than you did when you arrived. By the end of your first Martian year, your body thinks it's the middle of the night at what the mission schedule calls morning. Researchers found that you can adapt. A Harvard study showed that with careful, deliberate management of light exposure, the human circadian clock can be trained to match the Martian soul. But it doesn't happen automatically. Left to itself, your biology will fight the Martian day every single sol, generating a continuous low-grade exhaustion that compounds every other problem you have. The scientists who operated the Mars rovers from JPL lived on Mars time during the most critical mission phases. They wore 2 watches, one for Earth, one for Sol time, and described it as permanent jet lag that never resolved. They could go home at the end of their shift. You cannot. There is, buried in the genetics literature, a small note that's either comforting or deeply strange. A mutation in a gene called CRY, one produces a natural internal clock of about 24.5 hours, almost exactly the Martian soul. The people who carry it are usually called night owls. They have trouble fitting into Earth's schedules their whole lives. Chronobiologists call it delayed sleep phase disorder. On Mars, they're just on time. Number 6, the third quarter wall. No one has a breakdown on the dramatic days. Not when the engine fires, not when you land, not when something actually goes wrong and the adrenaline takes over and you fix it. The breakdown happens on a Tuesday, around month 13, when nothing in particular has happened and you are simply tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. There's a pattern that shows up in every long-duration isolation study ever conducted: Antarctic winter cruise, submarine deployments, the Mars 500 simulation in Moscow, where 6 people lived in a 550 cubic meter facility for 520 days, the longest controlled human confinement study ever run. Around 3/4 of the way through a mission, something shifts. Motivation drops. Mood flattens. The smallest irritations metastasize. Researchers call it the third quarter phenomenon, and it's about as inevitable as orbital mechanics. For an 18-month surface stay, the third quarter hits around month 13 or 14. You still have 4 or 5 months left. Earth is still 48 minutes away. The habitat is still about 100 square meters, your crewmates are still the same people. That last part is the one that accumulates. You cannot walk away from a conflict on Mars. There's no other room to go to, no drive to take, no bar to sit in alone for an hour. Whatever tension exists between you and another person in that habitat is going to be there tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. Research from the Mars 500 study found that 2 crew members generated 85% of all the conflict, and 2 crew members showed essentially no psychological disturbance at all for the entire 17 months, which tells you that this isn't really about the situation, it's about who you are. In a situation that has no exits, and then there's what gets displaced outward. Frustration that can't go anywhere inside the habitat tends to flow toward Earth, toward mission control, toward the people sending instructions with a 48-minute gap between the problem and the advice. The people on the ground can't de-escalate in real time. By the time their response arrives, the moment is already different. At some point during the mission, someone's parent will die. Someone will miss a child's first words, or a sibling's wedding, or a funeral they should have been at. These events will arrive as messages with an average delay of 20 minutes, and there will be no ritual available, no gathering, no shared meal, no physical presence with the people who are grieving. You will receive the information, and you will still be on Mars. And your crewmates will try to give you space in a room where there is no space to give. The thing training prepares you for is emergencies. What it cannot prepare you for is the weight of ordinary time compounding in a place you cannot leave. Number 7. You are the hospital. Mars is somewhere between 100 million and 400 million miles from Earth, depending on where both planets are in their orbits. At highway speed, you would reach Earth in somewhere between 1,500 and 6,000 years. The launch window that would let you leave Mars opens once every 26 months. The minimum transit time, once you're on your way, is 6 to 9 months. None of that is the scary part. The scary part is that you already knew all of this before you left, and you left anyway, and now someone is having an appendicitis. The window for a straightforward appendectomy, before things turn complicated and then life-threatening, is roughly 24 hours from the onset of symptoms. You have no surgeon. You have 40 hours of emergency medical training, a kit, a video link to Earth with a 48-minute round-trip delay, and a crewmate who has read about this procedure. The surgery will happen. It has to happen. And the guidance from Earth will arrive in batches, each answer landing well after the question was asked, while the patient is already on the table and something is already happening that cannot be paused. This is not a hypothetical fringe scenario. Medical events on long-duration missions are statistically likely. Kidney stones are actually more common in space. Dehydration and calcium loss from bone density changes combine in a way that's unpleasant to think about. Dental infections, cardiac events, trauma from EVA accidents, deep infections, that need surgical drainage. Someone on the crew has the most medical training. What happens if that person is the one who gets hurt? The medications you brought have a shelf life. Most drugs aren't tested or approved for 3-year stability. Some will still work at full strength, some will have degraded. In a partial gravity environment that no pharmacologist has ever studied, some medications absorb and distribute differently than the dosing instructions assume. The instructions were written for Earth. NASA has a concept called Level of Care 5, the highest level of autonomous medical capability ever designed for spaceflight. It doesn't exist yet as a deployable system. The people building it are working as fast as they can. The people going to Mars will probably get there first. There is, on the edge of this, a question that sounds philosophical but is completely practical. What do you do when someone is dying and there's nothing you can do, and Earth is 48 minutes away, and the person dying is looking at you? You practice scenarios. You didn't practice this one. Number 8. Earth becomes a star. Here's something that every single astronaut who has ever gone to space shares. At some point, they looked out the window and saw Earth. They saw it whole, blue and white and curved, sitting against the black like something impossibly alive. And something happened. Not to all of them, not the same way, but consistently enough that it has a name. The overview effect. A cognitive shift. a reordering of something basic about how you understand yourself and other people and the planet you came from. Astronauts describe it in words they usually save for other things. Awe, transcendence, a sudden inability to care about borders and politics in the presence of the obvious fragility of the whole thing. Space philosopher Frank White named it in 1987 after interviewing dozens of astronauts. It has been documented ever since. It is, by the accounts of the people who experienced it, one of the most significant moments of their lives. You will not experience it. From Mars, Earth is a point of light, not a disk, a point. Magnitude somewhere between negative 1.8 and positive 1.8, depending on orbital positions, which means it looks roughly like a bright star. Maybe Venus bright on a good day. You cannot see the continents. You cannot see the curvature. You cannot see the atmosphere as a color or a texture. The entirety of human civilization, 8 billion people, every language and city and ocean and mountain range, every person you have ever loved compressed into one pixel. What you do see is different. The Martian sky during the day is butterscotch, orange-brown from iron-rich dust scattering light in ways that are exactly backwards from Earth. The sun is smaller here, 43% smaller in diameter than you grew up seeing it. At sunset, the sky near the horizon goes blue while the rest fades to ash gray, a cold, eerie inversion of every sunset you've ever watched. NASA's Spirit rover captured the first one in 2005, and it looked alien even in a photograph. In person, standing on the surface, it will be something else entirely. Phobos rises in the west and sets in the east because it orbits Mars faster than Mars rotates. It crosses the sky in about 4 hours. Deimos barely moves, sitting low near the horizon for days at a time. The night sky is clear. Thin atmosphere means almost no scatter, but sound here is wrong in a way that takes time to locate. Mars's thin air absorbs high-pitched frequencies so completely that your voice, outside the suit, would sound muffled and low, like something heard from the wrong side of a wall. Perseverance's microphones recorded it in 2021. It sounds like the last room before silence. Here's where the confirmed science ends and something harder to name begins. Frank White calls what you might feel the Copernican perspective an awareness, not just intellectual, but visceral, that you are part of the solar system. That Earth is one object among several. That the thing you spent your whole life standing on is, from here, unremarkable in size. No human has experienced this, no simulation has produced it. White thinks it might be its own kind of transformation. He might be right, he might be completely wrong about what it actually feels like. What we do know is this. You will be the first humans in history to live surrounded by no living things. Not reduced living things, not quiet living things, no living things. Mars is, as far as we currently know, biologically dead. No soil microbes, no spores, no seeds, no roots pressing through rock, no insect sounds, no smell of earth after rain. Every human who has ever existed, every person in every Antarctic station, every submarine, every isolation chamber, was still on a living planet. You will not be. No training simulates that. No psychology study has data on it. Nobody knows what it does to a person over months to look out the window at a dead world and then look up at a star that used to be home. The people sending you there hope you'll be okay. They think you probably will be. But the honest answer, the one buried in every research paper about long-duration spaceflight psychology, is that we don't know. We have never sent anyone this far, for this long, with this little ability to come back. No one who has been to Mars can tell you what it's like. And the people we're sending there will have to figure out, in real time, who they become when Earth is just another star.